Hey guys, what's up? Welcome back to the channel. It's Cynicalex, and today we got a more substantial sneak peek number 2 for the upcoming 3.6 update in Marvel Future Fight. The first one being the America Chavez Miss America update hint teaser that I talked about in yesterday's video. But we have a lot more to talk about today, so let's jump right into it. So we are getting new story missions as per this kind of blurb. The story of Marvel Future Fight continues as our heroes fight for peace. The next new missions will take place on the SHIELD headquarters helicarrier, the Triskelion, and the Alpha Flight space station. So we're going into space. There's kind of a, space universal alien vibe to it, which does line up with the Ultimates and how the fact that they deal with mostly extraterrestrial, non-human or non-Earth-dwelling threats, villains that are coming from outer space, villains that are coming from dimensions away, and that's why you have dimensional teleporting characters like Miss America. You have people that can fly in space and do things like Spectrum and like Blue Marvel, because it matches up, and Captain Marvel for that matter, because it matches up with what we're seeing now from these updates. So we're definitely getting new story missions. What exactly we're going to be getting as far as the new story missions, it's tough to say. I will jump into that a little bit more, but I want to go through all of the kind of hints and clues, and then kind of give you my reflection on what it could mean for the game and what it could mean for your development and your progress in the game moving forward. So we got this pretty lame picture on the English Mobirum forum. They do not share screenshots, as I discovered, and I have been noticing for a long time, but I kind of put the pieces together with some help from people on the live stream, and we see Captain America fighting Black Panther. So again, it's got another confirmation of Ultimates, Black Panther being a part of that group. If you jump over to the Taiwanese Mobirum forum, however, you get a much better picture, and this one was not taken in cinematic mode or the kind of movie mode. It's taken in the base mode where you can see all of the data. So as you can see, this is chapter 13.1 from the upper right hand corner, and this is the three kind of staple Avengers fighting against a Black Panther with almost 1,000,000 HP. That's a lot of HP. It's not as much as Odin has in chapter 12.8, but it's similar to something in chapter 12.1, 12.2 as far as I'm concerned. And then you see some enemies behind Captain America and Black Panther in their battle. So something's going to happen. There's going to be some sort of twist where an evil version of Ultimates come out, or for some reason they're not aligned with the rest of the characters in our universe in Marvel Future Fight, and we have to fight against them. So it'll be interesting to see how they weave that story and what they say about it, because as we discussed in yesterday's video, the Ultimates were mentioned by Jean Grey as the heroes to stop the incoming interdimensional threat. So why we're fighting the guys that are stopping the interdimensional threat is kind of confusing. Perhaps they come as the heralds of Galactus, which was in one of the images I showed yesterday. That would mean that Galactus is coming not as a life-bringing entity, but as a world-destroying entity, as he's usually known, as a devourer. But we'll have to see and wait. But I am excited for that. I'm curious about that. In addition, they are changing around some story mission character upgrades. So this is purely a quality of life and also farming improvement for the game, and this will affect all players as soon as the update is out. Essentially what they're doing is any character that you can grind their bios for, any character whose biometrics drop in chapter 1 or all the way to the end of chapter 10 missions, so everything excluding the Asgardian missions, those characters' tier 2 advancement costs will be cut in half, besides the gold. So instead of 800 black antimatter, as you can see, it's 400 for MODOK. Instead of 1,000 Chaos Norn Stones, which is probably the hardest part, you only have to pay 500. And the same thing goes for bios and regular colored Norn Stones. So that, I think, is a very wonderful thing to do. I don't know why it wasn't done sooner, frankly, but I think that it's a nice way for Netmarble to gain back some of the trust of the community, and it's a way to accelerate the progress of new and especially intermediate players who feel like they're starting to get it and they have a game plan, but they just don't have enough tools at the ready to do 5 world boss clears every day, to do 30 stages of Shadowland, and they're really trying to get their hand up on the next ladder rung so they can climb up to the top of the mountain. However, as of yet with these updates and these sneak peeks, we don't know if they're actually changing what's at the top of the ladder. They're just making it a little bit easier to climb the ladder. I like that, but again, if you climb the ladder and there's nothing at the top, which we know there's nothing at the top because there's no end game in this game, it's not going to make the ladder climb that much more enjoyable once you experience it. But I don't want to poo-poo it too much. I do like this change. I think it's fantastic. I will discuss in a little bit later in the video what it actually means in depth and what my questions are, because I do have questions about it. Moving on, we also got a little teaser at the end which had to do with Blue Marvel. Now, it has since been removed from the post, but I did capture it on my live stream, and so I was able to get the text for you guys. But essentially what's being said, and the blurb was sort of hinting at, is Blue Marvel. So this basically confirms that Blue Marvel is coming as part of its update with Miss America. Probably tomorrow or in the next couple of days we will see some cover art and some teaser art for him. But what happened was the CM, Wingfoot, created this kind of star log, and in the star log he makes reference to an asteroid the size of Arkansas, and then also splitting the moon in half. These being 2 feats of strength that Blue Marvel was documented to have been capable of doing. In one case, he actually did carry the asteroid, which was reported to be the size of Arkansas, which is gigantic. In another case, he threw a medallion at the moon, and the impact was so fantastic and incredible and damaging that the Watcher, who was living there on the moon, observed that it would have split the moon in half had he, you know, thrown it with more accuracy, or maybe thrown it with a little bit more force. So we can almost guarantee at this point, despite the fact that they've gone back and redacted that information, which I think is kind of funny, we can confirm that Blue Marvel will be going into the game with the next update, unless for some reason that was redacted so that we don't get our hopes up, which I think would be a bit sneaky, and I wouldn't appreciate that from Netmarble, but we'll have to wait and see. But that is all the information we got so far from this second sneak peek, but it has quite a few ramifications, and I first want to discuss the ramifications as far as the story mode stuff with the tier 2 characters, because I know a lot of you are going to have questions about that. So essentially what this change will do is it will make all of the characters you see here, from Captain America all the way to Ultron, again Mockingbird all the way to MODOK, and yes, there are repeats, but you get what I'm saying. All of these characters from chapters 1 to 10 will have their tier 2 costs cut in half. Besides the gold, it will still cost 2.5 million gold. I think they could have cut the gold in half, but it's okay. The only question I have about this concerns Thor, because Thor is the only character that appears on chapter 8, but he also appears, as we know, as part of the Asgard in chapter 12. So we'll be curious to see if Thor is included in that reduction or not. I think it would be really unwise for Netmarble to not include Thor, because he just got a new uniform and he's a beloved character and he's got a new movie out. So I think for the good of the community and for the benefit of the community, and also to keep the relations positive, they should definitely include Thor in that list. There has been some speculation that chapter 9 and 10 won't be included, because it has been reported, I think on the Japanese Mobirum, that they were only going up to chapter 8 in their report, and apparently the Korean Naver Cafe post, which is mimicking the ones on Mobirum, except for it's for the Korean players, also said only chapters 1 to 8. Again, Thor is still included in that list, whether it's 1 to 10 or 1 to 8, but it will be interesting to see which one it is and if Thor is in or out. Some suggestions I have for you, of course, the most obvious being don't tier 2 anyone who is on this list from chapter 1, Captain America, all the way to the end of chapter 10, which we see is Daisy Johnson. Just wait for the update. Once the update drops, I'll make another video about it, but if you want some offhanded recommendations, I think Black Bolt is an awesome tier 2 with that new reduced cost. Of course, if you have his uniform, Thor. If you haven't tier 2'd Spider-Man yet, I don't know why you haven't, but definitely pick him up. Black Panther's another good one, especially if he gets a buff or a uniform or both with this ultimate update. Some villains that you could consider are, you know, Crossbones, or sorry, not Crossbones, Bullseye, Green Goblin, Venom with the uniform, although he's a hero, and you could even go for someone like Elektra, although she's also a hero. There's actually not that many good villains. Dr. Octopus, not so much from the story mode, chapters 1 to 10, but obviously if chapter 9 and 10 are included, Phil Coulson is another great pickup for his usefulness in World Boss Ultimate, Alliance Battle Extreme, things like that, especially if you don't have Valkyrie. Another thing that I wanted to discuss briefly is this interesting kind of development within the existing character rankings that we have. Because up until now, we've only had native tier 2 characters, which cost an enormous amount of resources, and then everyone else, which just cost the same 1,000 Chaos Norn Stones, 800 Black Antimatter, 2.5 million gold, etc., etc. Now with this new division, Netmarble has seemingly taken 2 groups and made 3 groups out of that. So they've taken the existing tier 1 characters who all needed the same requirements, and they've now divided them into 2 categories. We have the super cheapo 500 Nornstone group, which is the story mission characters, and then we now have everyone else. And this still makes up the majority of the characters in the game. I didn't do the math, but I would guess it's probably around 60 characters. But I'm talking all of the bio subscription only, all the paywall characters, all the bio metric and X-Men selector and tracking mission selector characters, and also all of the special mission characters that aren't included in the story mode mission, you know, or they're kind of strikers, or they're part of the epic quest. So all of the Ancient One, Baron Mordo, things like that, those characters, even Clea. So it's interesting to see that Netmarble has kind of created this divide. I'm not sure if this is their way of creating kind of a tier 1.5, tier 1, and then tier 2 native character ranking. I'm not sure if that's their indication or their kind of expression that these characters are meant to be less strong, because that would mean that we're probably never going to see a buff or a rework for characters like Ultron, which is, or even Punisher, which is really sad if that's the case. I really hope that we're not losing out on those things by accepting this kind of olive branch from Netmarble. It's interesting that they didn't include chapters 11 and 12, because frankly most of these characters actually suck a lot. You know, Captain America, Black Widow, and Iron Man are better tier 2s than Fandral, Hogan, and Volstagg, just straight up. Hela's an okay tier 2, Thor is great with his new uniform, and Malekith has some use. Ulik is also not very good, but in general, the chapter 11 and 12 characters tier 2 are pretty disappointing, so it's interesting why they made that change. It's also going to be interesting to see whether this chapter 13 is more difficult than the Odin stage, because we can see here that the team attack is recommended at 22.7 thousand, and we do know that these are tier 2 enemies, both the regular mobs plus Odin having more than 1 million HP. So it will be cool to see where our enemies rank. They're probably all going to be tier 2, that's my guess, but it appears that they're going to have less HP, at least at the beginning, with that chapter 13.1 screenshot that we saw. Perhaps chapter 13.8 or 13.10, if we only have one set of chapters, or one new chapter set, will go up past the power level of Odin, and we'll have some new great challenge comparable to, you know, a world boss ultimate perhaps. It's still interesting, and we're gonna have to wait and see. Finally, it will be interesting to see how many of the new characters are part of the chapter 13 farmable selection from these different story mode missions. We already know we're getting Miss America, we already pretty much know we're getting Blue Marvel, we're expecting Spectrum, but perhaps some of the other characters are going to be existing ones that will become farmable here in chapter 13, the way that they did chapter 11 and 12. Even though they introduced some new characters, they also added existing characters like Thor and gave us more opportunities to farm him. So perhaps we'll see places or story mode missions where we can farm for Captain Marvel's bios or Black Panther's bios. Additionally, some people have suggested to me, and I think it's very possible, that we will have a quest where by completing chapter 12.8 we unlock 20 bios of the new native tier 2. Whether that's Blue Marvel or another character altogether, perhaps Galactus, we'll have to wait and see, but that's definitely a possibility, and that's probably the most likely form of biometric delivery system if they want to include one superpowered character for this update. I don't really care if they make any of the characters native tier 2 or not personally, but I am curious what you think, if you want one of these characters to be native tier 2, or if you're out of resources and you just want regular farmable characters from Netmarble. What are you expecting from this new story mode, or this new story mission and story missions? You know, what do you expect out of this new chapter? If you have any ideas, hit me up in the comments below. As I always say, subscribe if you're having a good time, and of course, if you like what you see, I hope to see you again tomorrow. Take care.